And we are live in 3, 2, 1. Hey, it's good to see you again. I haven't recorded or uploaded a video in about a week and a half or so because I've been dealing with some heavy loss in the family. But I'm feeling a lot better, more balanced, and up to recording again, which is great. Grieving process is different for everybody. When I finally got around to getting this channel rolling, I told myself that if I wasn't there mentally or emotionally, that I wasn't going to push through it because that could just make things worse, and it's just not worth it. You need to watch out and protect your own self. Do what you can there. Let's get into the character creation process. Oh, I forgot to mention in my last video, but this, if you click play intro, the opening cinematic plays, I believe. I may be wrong. We're going to play it anyways, and I'm not going to talk over it.
He's headed for a tear.
Hurry! Where are your gods now, Guardian?
I wasn't chosen for my fate. No!
Life Rift!
Ancestor souls, your strength is mine!
The gods know the score, Defiant. Now, so do you.
Oh man, I'm getting fired up watching that again. I haven't seen that cinematic in a long time. Graphics are a bit outdated by today's standards because the game is so old and in its maintenance state, but I still think it looks pretty good. Next, it's going to have you pick a shard or server. Don't bother with the trial-only servers because they're going to be limited access, and there's going to be even less players on there than the already small player base overall. Deepwood has some of the most players on it, but the level 1 to 29 chat channel that most people type in can be joined by someone of any level on any shard as well too, so it doesn't really matter which one. Lathes Oceanic was just the one that I picked first of a couple of friends I started with. Create gives you a choice of joining or not joining, being different factions of Guardians or Defiance. Each of them has their own respective starting zones, and all of the races start in each respective one as well too, which is unlike WoW, where you can choose where you, or they have their own starting. You don't get to choose that. What am I thinking? Getting all mixed up here. So for the Guardians, it says the Guardians are the chosen of the gods, brought back from death to save the world from the corruption of the dragons. Each Guardian has a great destiny to become a celestial hero. For the Defiants, it says Defiants have taken fate into their own hands, turning away from the Vigil to pursue their own plan. They harness the power of the plains to fuel magical technologies for the defense of Talara. Next is picking the races. Each of the factions has 3 different races, and either male or female. There are no combat advantages to picking either of them, so just pick the what you like the look of and go from there. Bathosians are basically the humans of this world. It says long before it was destroyed by the Shade, Cold Mathosia was ever the home of legendary heroes and warriors. Then they got High Elves. This is the oldest of the races of Talara, which is the world this game takes place in. The High Elves are the protectors of the land. Wise and skilled, their tranquil nature masks a ruthless dedication to the gods. Then you've got Dwarves. It says they're known for their stolid and pragmatic nature, but are also a curious and creative people, masters of whatever craft they employ. If you go to Guardians, they've got the Eth. It says they rose up in the deserts of the south. A clever and resourceful race. They have a tradition of taming their environment with magic and technology. Then you've got the Kalari. This was the first character I made, was a Kalari cleric, so I'll always have a soft spot for that race. It says the elves of the Lost Kalari Isles have been tainted by generations of exposure to raw planar magic. Powerful spiritual mediums, the Kalari are a powerful but somewhat unpredictable race. In fact, they're so powerful that they list it twice in their description. Then they got the Bami. So these exotic tribesmen of the Razadeh Canyons are a hospitable race of strong, clever people who excel both in the arts of war and crafts. Each of the races has an active and a passive damage resist racial ability. And like I said just a minute ago, there are no combat advantages because the active abilities can't be used in combat. So it's just mostly utility stuff for that kind of stuff. But either one I think you'd be more than happy with. Go backwards from here. The Bami's active is Mighty Leap. It leaps at the selected area, 30-meter range on a 15-second cooldown. So if you wanted to play a warrior type with a heroic leap like in WoW, then the Bami would be the best to match that theme. Then they have a 20 air damage resist. Kalari's active is Camouflage. You turn into a cute little fox for up to 30 seconds. Decreasing the range at which enemies aggro you, and it also despawns any pets the Kalari might have on a 2-minute cooldown. So if you want to sneak past a group of mobs or whatever, then this could be a good option for you. They've got 20 fire damage resist. The Eth's active is Agility, increases movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. If you want to zip around the worlds a bit quicker, this race has the slight advantage, but with mounts and everything, it doesn't really matter in the end. Then they've got 20 earth damage resist. Back to the Guardians. The Dwarves active is Dwarven Breakfast. It restores 8% health and mana each second for over 13 seconds on a 10-minute cooldown. That's an interesting way to say it's 104% health and mana, because that's what it does. It doesn't say it can't be used in combat, but before making this video, I made a dwarf and started attacking a mob, and you definitely can't use it in combat, so it loses a little bit of value there. But it's also the only one of the 6 races that has a full heal on cooldown 6 times an hour, so it still has some pretty good value there. They've got 20 water resistance. High Elf's active is Angelic Flight. Flies toward this selected area. 30-meter range, 15-second cooldown. So it's like the Bami's Heroic Leap. I think I got that right, didn't I? Mighty Leap. Yeah, I keep getting my games mixed up. It's like the Bami's active, but it's a little more elegant and graceful to me. And for that alone, if I was using both of those, I would go with the High Elf instead, just because it looks pretty. Then I've got 20 in life damage resist. Mathosian's racial, their active, is a Motivational Roar. Increases the movement speed of the Mathosian and nearby group members by 30% for 10 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. So it's 20% slower than the Eth's racial, their active, and lasts 5 seconds less, but your entire group gets that bonus. So I can see that being valuable if you were in a dungeon or raid or something like that. If there's enough people to run them, that your whole group gets to speed through a mechanic out of combat. And they've got 20 death damage resist. And all of the races can be every class in the game. It's not like WoW where like the humans can only be a certain amount of classes. It's wide open, so just pick whatever out of combat active racial you want. The 20 damage resist isn't very much when the game scales a lot more than that, but at least they're there doing something for you. At level 1 is pretty strong. Now we get to the calling or classes. I know what you're thinking. How can an MMO only have 4 or 5 classes when you consider that Primalist does not come with the game and you need to buy it with real money once on your account if you want it? Like I've said before, please don't buy that unless you're really invested into the game. Well, the class system and everything has a ton of flexibility in this game. Every class can be a proper tank, melee or ranged DPS, healer, support, or any hybrid in between if you want something like really specific for a raid comp or something like that. A great example of this is you can play a warrior that does ranged storm and electric damage, called a Stormborn with a Tempest Soul. That's one of my favorite builds because nothing about it makes sense compared to most other warrior melee damage type in a lot of other games. It doesn't show it on this screen, but Primalists have a support soul, so you can play them as a support. It doesn't have a preset for it, so that leads me to believe that it might not be as strong as some of the other supports on the other classes, but I may be wrong. Maybe there's really strong support. And though they can all play every role, they're not all equal in how they do it, of course, because then there would be no point in selecting the different ones. This might be a what-if scenario, but let's say a warrior tank, maybe they're the best at mitigating physical damage, and a mage tank could be better at magic damage. I don't know that. I have always played solo DPS when I've played, and I've never really played a support class. Some of the damage and healing specs are better at single target, some are better at AoE, of course. Support builds usually say they're better in groups, but there could be a fun build that does some pretty good damage on its own. That's the main reason why I never really played with the support builds, because I play it like a single player game. So supports are off my radar from my level 1 to 70 run. You can find some versions of WoW's classes and specialization types inside of these 5 classes here. If you want to play a hunter type, they're in Rogue. If we click next, you've got the purpose or the specialization. This screen doesn't really matter for character creation because as soon as you log into the game, you can have more than these presets available to you. I feel like I skipped that. Oh yeah, some of the presets and souls don't come with the game on the initial download, and you need to buy them once on your account, like the Primalist Soul or Primalist Calling. But like I keep saying, please don't buy that. I'm not using reverse psychology on you. If we go over to Huntsman, it shows a ranged character with a bow and a tanky looking boar pet next to it. So that looks a lot like a Beast Mastery Hunter. If we go to the Skirmisher preset, it shows that same ranged character with a bow, but no pet beside them. So that looks a lot like a Marksmanship Hunter to me. And then Night Stalker is the classic Subtlety Rogue. If you want to play a Warlock, and this game's version of WoW's Affliction spec in particular, it's in Mage. It's called Grave Lord, or in Warrior called Plague Lord. They both do things a little bit differently, but they both have undead mobs they can bring up and everything to help them. If you want to play an Unholy Death Knight type character, they're in Mage. Oh no, I got that completely wrong. All right, let's backtrack here. Skip a step. If you want to play a Warlock and their Affliction spec, it's in Mage and it's called Reaper, but you don't get to see that preset until you log into the game. Then now I'm back on track again. If you want to play an Unholy Death Knight type character, they're in Mage, called a Grave Lord, or in where was I here? And Warrior called Plague Lord. The Plague Lord is a wild adventure. It's has a 61 Reaver Soul, and it's like taking WoW's Arms Warrior, Assassination Rogue, and Affliction Warlock and combining them all into one DPS melee character. It does outrageous dot damage that scales with how many dots you have on the target. If I get Warrior on my character creation that will be in the next video, I might roll this build. Stormborn with 61 Tempest Soul for that ranged electric damage Warrior would be my other choice, because it's so different, like I mentioned earlier. If you want to play a Druid, they're in Cleric, and it has 2 different forms. There's a trade-off of either higher DPS and a little less tanky, or a little less DPS, but a lot tankier. And both of them use pets. Any class in Soul that has a pet, generally they're going to be really strong. If you want to play Enhancement Shaman type, it's in Warrior called Planar Seether, but that preset will only be available once you hit level 60, which is pretty far into the journey. I feel like that's more of like an end game type of thing, but I've never played end game content in this game to know for sure. For any of the presets you won't have access to until you hit certain levels, you can make a custom build for them, but you'll have to do some more research and planning and look up a guide for them, because there's no preset until you hit that level. And then the gear preview here, this doesn't matter. This isn't what you're going to get, but this is kind of a general thing of the type of gear you could have. So this one doesn't matter. For the characters' looks, I think they did a pretty good job overall. You can change their face shape anywhere on a spectrum, from more square, more triangle, more circle, or anywhere in between. I would usually set it just right about in the middle to be kind of the best of both worlds. You can spam the random button. It's gonna say, do you want to do that? It'll change everything there. If there's a section that you want to keep, click the little lock, and then that will stay the same, but everything else will shift about. Some of the hair and highlight colors, especially, are so close together that it can be hard to determine the differences there. But I found that going either darker base and contrasting with a lighter highlight color, or the opposite way, generally works the best. And from here, when you hit next, cutscene will play that's different for every faction. But I'm going to stop the video for here. And if you want to see those, they're on YouTube for you. That's just about all I've got for this video now. In the next one, I'll create my character to my run to 70 with RN Jesus that I keep talking about. Y'all take it easy. I'll see you in the next video.